Hello, creative ones, and welcome to Mixed Media Art Fundamentals, where we cover all of the basics and all of the questions you've always wanted to know to get you started in mixed media art. Now, I'm Michelle Brown with mixedmediaart.net, and with all my experience and all my questions, I have packaged this all up with a series of short videos to give you some ideas on how to get started, how to build up those layers, ways to get to know your materials, and things to use. Now, in this episode, episode 12, we are talking about the finishing touches. And before we jump in, make sure you give us a like, put your questions in the comments, of course, subscribe, and make sure you continue to share in the mixed media art fun. Now, the finishing touches are the best part sometimes of creating a layout. Sometimes, yes, there can be a bit more pressure not to muck it up, but it's also a way of not even the icing on the cake. We're sort of putting the decorations on top of the icing on the cake. It's just those little finishing touches. And it's a way to enhance what you've got, to add a little bit more depth, to make sure it's integrated, to really look like check that we've balanced and looked at the piece and balanced it out. And then also, there's so many different things that we can use that we've probably got in our stash that we haven't used yet. So we can pull out our markers, we can get all those water-soluble crayons out because this really is our last layer. We're not going to be adding anything else. We can use our inks, we can use our metallic pens, we can do embossing, we can do stamping. There's so many different ways that we can do it. And there are ways that we can help, like we said, integrate our images that we've talked about already and our words by adding shadows. We can add highlights, we can add features, we can just do some doodling. And even if you're not very confident with sort of freehand drawing, there's lots of little things that we can do to make it our own piece and really ensure that, we do express ourselves. This is a great time to add borders, to add splatters, and really add those metallic highlights. Again, the things that we want to sit on top so that as we look at the piece and look down into the layers and share our work with people who appreciate it, that they can really understand that depth and that interest and the intrigue that we've built up as we put this piece together. So the other thing, of course, as we're adding the finishing touches is how do we know when it's finished? And that is always really hard to tell, but I find in mixed media, because we have been adding layers as we go, and we're not sort of going too far back, we're not going to wipe it all out and start again, is that we really want to make sure we're bringing our ideas to the conclusion, so sort of a bit of a focal point. If we find we're getting some ideas and they're starting to diverge what we want to do, that's probably a really good time to stop. Definitely write down those ideas, think about how you might use them in another piece. But if you suddenly think, oh, I'm going to add a dash of a very different color or put something else on, that might be time to just go, whoa, okay, let's leave it for now. Some of the things we can do is just leave it, let it sit overnight, perhaps give ourselves some distance from it, turn it upside down, or take a photo. There's lots of different ways that we can look at our piece to decide, is that finished yet? Is it balanced? Have we got a good balance of color? Have we taken some of the background colors and put it into the focal point? Have we taken the focal point colors and put it into the background? Have we got the right bits highlighted? Have we created those horizons, those foundations, those shadows that our elements need? And then when we're happy that we've got that balance, and what I tend to do when I'm finished is to stop, to sign and date it. So once I've signed and dated a piece, my pledge to myself is that I won't go back, and I don't always not go back, but if I'm not sure, I will leave it. But once it's signed and dated, I'm considering that piece done. I won't go back and touch it up. That is the end of it. So I've got so many examples to share with you. So let's jump in. So I've had so much fun digging out all my finishing touches elements and tools. So like I said, one of our favorite things are paint markers. And again, these are great. We do always want to make sure we give them a really good shake and store them lying down. These are the Life of Colour ones. I've got the really nice thin black and white ones, as well as metallics, and lots of great colours, and most of them are really opaque. So again, like any of our materials, make sure you try them out. You understand how they're going to look, but they are just so much fun for adding details. We've got our water-soluble crayons, and one of my favourites are the Dean or Wakely scribble sticks. These are also a good way for adding those shadows, for building them up really slowly. And because they are water-soluble, if we get a bit scared, we can always use a wet brush or a wipe or a paper towel or kitchen towel to bring it back, so it doesn't have to be too scary. I've got some metallic paint here that I love using. I don't tend to use it as a spray. I will tend to take it out and sort of dip it on with either a paintbrush or like a cotton bud. And this is the cheap metallic paint from Kmart or Walmart. And then we've got some great inks as well, which are always fun for splatters. So this is the all-purpose ink by Fantastics, and this is a bronze one, I think it's called bronze, bright copper, and a white one. And they're really good for adding those details as well. So where are some of the things, and like everything, sometimes these are hard to see until we sort of look at them. And even I was going, oh, look at this, look at that. So some of the finishing touches on this piece, here I've added some stamping. And you can see here I've put it across the image and the background to help embed it. I've done quite a bit of outlining here to give her some interest, added a little bit of colour into her. What else have we done? So here I've used the paint markers to create these lines and these dots. And then again, some of this is really subtle until you're looking for it. I've created a bit of a netting of dots here as well in the pink and again in the blue. So not introducing any new colours at this stage, just adding those little dots there and again through there. I've added some scribbly or some asymmetric writing in there. Again, don't know what it says, but it just helps put a bit of interest there. And then this piece has a border. So again, using a water-soluble crayon or pencil, just giving it that little bit of a border, making sure I've got that horizon. So some of it can be enhancing our images and our quotes as well, and other times finishing it off. And it really is interesting to take a photo before you've put the border on, to put the border on and then take another photo, and it really does show how it just helps to frame the piece, which is why we frame things, and helps bring our eye back into the focal points rather than sort of sliding off. Oh, it looks like I've got some odd little dots there as well. So in this piece, again, we can see lots of shadowing, highlighting the words. Here I've used a marker to put some little crosses in there and added some gold dots when it was dry. Little series of gold dots there, and again it's lovely how that catches the light. And then again, once we start looking closely, we've got some gold dots there and there. And sometimes, how do we know where to put it? Just kind of trust my instincts. Somewhere we'd sort of use as highlights. Yes, it's off the image, but again, it doesn't take away from it. Got some gold dots through her hair. I've had some stenciling dots here, and here I've used the gold. Can you see that? I've used the gold to enhance that dotty pattern around there. And then added a few more lines with some dots and highlights. So it's a really fun way to just add those little bits, like I said, to make it your own. This is a big step from Michelle Logan's original image. In this one, we were looking at this previously when we were talking about words. I've added a gold marker to highlight the letters. Again, using the gold markers and the paint markers to create these dot patterns through here, highlighting here. And here I've done it across the image as well, again, to really help create that horizon and embed it in. More scribbles, following the patterns, adding some highlights, and again, that border around with the waterproof marker. This one I grabbed because it had, again, some simple things that you might not think of, but just a series of lines. Again, trying to work in odd numbers, using it to sort of stitch things together. And of course, you could use stitching as well. This is on canvas, so you could easily actually pierce it and put some stitching in. I tend to just use my markers to represent that. More dots, more lines. Here I've got a hint of a circle in the background, and I've used a black marker to highlight that. A few more dots and lines to highlight and enhance the paint behind it. And this one's been given a border with some black paint. So again, you want to do that nice and slowly, or you do end up getting that everywhere. Now this one I know we've looked at throughout the series, but I wanted to share it with you because this one, being on the wooden panel, I actually did some embossing. So stamping with a Versamark, which is like a ink pad with glue, and then adding on the embossing. So I've got the 3 crosses here in black, and then I've added these lines here, here, and here in pink. And it really is nice because it's shiny, it stands up a bit, it just gives it an amazing feel. You definitely want to do that once the background is dry because we don't want the embossing powder sticking to everything. But just as we would emboss a card, we could stamp with the Versamark, put the powder on, brush it off, check we've got it all off, and then heat that with a heat gun and it sets just fine. So some of the other things, some shadows, highlighting the letters, using the coloured markers to then pull it through different places. So adding some doodles, but then using that to colour in as well, just to make sure that our colours are really cohesive. We're using those greens, those pinks, those oranges, the purples in different colours. So hopefully that's given you lots of ideas of different ways that we can add those finishing touches to our mixed media artwork. So I hope that's given you some encouragement to play with your finishing touches, to not let it get overwhelming or scary or worried that you're going to ruin it. We're doing things really slowly. And even with paint markers, if we think we've got it in a wrong spot, get a wet cloth or a baby wipe and wipe it off. In most cases, because we've sealed it so well with that gel medium, these layers, once they're dry, will be permanent, but we can remove them if we think we've made a mistake. We can use our water-soluble crayons, our paint markers, our inks, our metallic paints. This is the time to go wild and add all those shadows and highlights. And like I said, it's just the fun part. When do you know when to stop? Like I said, that can take a bit of getting used to, but if you find you're just getting a little bit carried away and coming up with some wild ideas, that might be the time to stop, to set it aside, think about it before ploughing on, and perhaps keeping some of those ideas for your next piece. So as always, pop your questions in the comments. I look forward to hearing your thoughts about adding finishing touches and how do you know when to stop? I think it is very different for each artist and it is something you need to explore as you develop your own style. And I would love for you to give us a like, share us with your crafty friends, subscribe, and I look so much forward to catching up with you again soon. This is Michelle signing off. I hope you have a crafty day.